my name is Che Buford. I'm a violinist, composer, and improviser, currently based in Brooklyn, also born and raised. And yeah, I appreciate composers now for giving me a platform to talk and reflect on my practice this far. My musical journey started with violin. I started violin when I was around 10 years old and was self-taught for 2 years. I learned basic technical things and some songs through YouTube and other equivalent internet platforms. I realized I wanted to take lessons to further advance and tackle technical things I would need guidance on. My training was classical. I did different youth orchestra programs, pre-college programs at high school, and then eventually studied violin for my undergrad at Boston Conservatory. Yes, so I listened to a bunch of different kinds of music growing up. My dad, who's a hip hop artist and avid record collector, would play all kinds of things for us at home. We primarily listened to hip hop, R&B, soul with artists like Jay Dilla, Erica Badu, The Roots, um, D'Angelo, but also people like Radiohead, James Blake, Sudan Archives. And I would say, like, when I started high school, um, I grew interested in a lot of electronic music and EDM with artists like Skrillex, Seven Lions, and also people like Nils Froms and Oliver Arnolds. So I began composing probably around age 13, which was still like during my early years of violin training. I would occasionally write pieces for myself, melodies, and even improvise at that time. But it wasn't until probably around my junior year where I started working with notation and began writing pieces for other people to play. The American Composers Orchestra had an outreach program that was partnered with my school. And through there, we had group composition classes that went over the basics of notation and, um, yeah, and provided professional reading sessions for all of us. I remember for the longest time leading up to there that I was very intimidated with the idea of composing. One, because didn't believe that people actually notated music seriously for a living. And two, I thought you had to be this erudite music theory genius to even compose. But I explored a piece around that time called Clearing Dawn and Dance by Judd Greenstein. And I think that probably was one of my first um, contemporary classical new music pieces that I listened to. And I was completely blown away because I think I was moved by the familiarity that the piece evoked with the things that I grew up listening to. And I think to just have that connection within that piece was very inspiring and really showed me that contemporary concert music could really be whatever you want. And that's what that was one of the main things that inspired me to begin writing my own music for other people. The first piece that I would like to share is called The Lunatic, written for mezzo soprano and piano. This work sets the poetry of Charles Simic. Although this piece being an earlier work of mine, I found it to be a significant work at this point. It was the first time I embraced true simplicity in my music. I remember during that stage of my practice, I would frequently try to overcomplicate things, but for this piece, I found myself being content with this concept of less is more and working with space. I also think the influence of the poem and Charles Simic's work in general played a huge part. I would describe Simic's poetry like photographs. They're concise, but evoke vivid memory and imagery. I tried to take this approach with this piece, which resulted in the work taking on a repetitive, minimalist, and stark quality while evoking a sense of place. All of these qualities continue to inform my work to this day. The next piece is another vocal work called Midnight Often for soprano, viola, and piano. This work sets the poetry of R.H. Sin from his book Whiskey, Words, and a Shovel. Similar to The Lunatic, I was drawn by the sparseness and directness this poem exudes. The poem describes the emotional struggles and turmoil that one can experience during the night. Musically, I aim to capture the slow buildup of intensity in the form, as well as exploring the tension that permeates in a silent, nocturnal atmosphere.
That surrounds me each night. Closing my eyes, trying to forget, I remember everything. I remember everything. I I've been much more than I like, trying to
I Have Been Here Before was my first piece for percussion. I was interested in exploring the concepts of deja vu and the transition between streams of consciousness. My approach to this piece was to create a connection between the resonances of the vibraphone and the process of memory, using these resonances as a metaphor for how memory lingers, fades, and intersect. At times, the resonance and melodic lines that are being used evoke a sense of blurriness and dreaminess, mirroring the uncertain and fleeting nature of memories, while at other times they provide clarity, reflecting more vivid memories. This technique of connecting sonic attributes to memory and place is a common theme in my work. Trapped is a work for a sinfonietta ensemble, inspired by a dream where I found myself stuck in an elevator. This piece aims to evoke a sense of confinement through a limited pitch world and music that exudes anxiety. Additionally, it explored the creation of imaginary acoustic spaces that delve into different dimensions of vastness and distance. In this excerpt that I'm sharing, the moment where the key changes, there's a moment where the music transitions to evoke the deep darkness and vastness of the elevator shaft below. Through this section, the music gradually unfolds, revealing and exploring expansiveness. The next couple of pieces, I will share solo violin and viola works accompanied by fixed media that I've written over the past 2 years. As I composed these pieces, I delved deep into my own relationship with the instruments, particularly the violin. Writing these works allowed me to develop a unique intimacy with the violin, exploring themes of humanness and self expression. I found myself obsessing over the timbral aspects of the violin that resonated with me and felt good to play. The incorporation of electronics in all of these works further heighten the introspection while enhancing expressiveness. And I said, I explore a process of self expression, specifically a narrative that depicts a struggle to express oneself. And I was interested in this idea of working with various types of overpressure that transform into an ordinary tone. This transformation symbolizes the desire to transcend feelings of restraint and pain, while also creating the dialogue with the voice that exists in the electronics throughout the piece. Tenderness and Rot for solo viola and electronics takes its name and inspiration from Kay Ryan's poem. I was inspired by the juxtaposition between tenderness and decay that this poem conveys. The work comes off as lush, but there's always this underlying element of instability. All Kinds of Fires in Our Heads is about my experience dealing with, with a hand injury and the process of recovery. In this excerpt, Moving Parts, I imagine my body intricately working together to build itself back. You'll hear multiple components between the live violin and electronics, which involves various samples of myself playing, all vigorously working together. So the next couple of pieces that I'll share are a couple of my chamber works with various instrumentations. The first is I Don't See Stars, where I'm from, is my piano trio, and it was inspired by a memory that I had from the summer of 2022. While stargazing in Western Massachusetts, I reflected on the absence of stars in Brooklyn, where I'm from. The piece captures the essence of nighttime and stargazing while also serving a poignant reflection on light pollution. I've incorporated field recordings of crickets and cicadas to evoke the atmosphere of the place that inspired me. Then Feel Fragments for oboe, cello, and marimba draws its name from a poem by Hannah Enzer and Laura Wetherington. Inspired by the fragmentation within the poem, I explore the themes of fragmentation within my own work. The piece features short gestures that are looped and manipulated over time, creating a sense of continuity and evolution. Then City Psalms sets the poetry of my friend Ruby Gelly Newman for low voice, bass clarinet, trumpet, trombone, and pre-recorded electronics. This piece aims to reflect various aspects of urban life. The electronics consists mostly of manipulated train sounds, along with wind and other electronic elements. The instruments at times mimics trains while also enhancing the emotional journey of the narrator. I'm also excited to share my string orchestra piece, Inner Palpability. This composition is inspired by the poetry of Will Alexander and a personal memory of visiting a redwood forest in Northern California. My aim with this piece was to create a dialogue between Alexander's poetry and the atmosphere of the forest. Drawing from the imagery of Alexander's poem and my own experience, I crafted very specific timbres unique to string instruments, as well as forming an arc informed by these elements. For the final part of this presentation, I'd like to take a moment to share some of my recent work as a performer and discuss some upcoming projects. Lately, I've been focused on integrating my various artistic practices, being a performer, composer, and improviser, into a cohesive whole. The notion of keeping my performer and composition practices separate no longer resonated with me. Instead, I'm embracing a more unified approach. My current performance practice revolves around improvised music where I have the freedom to explore and experiment in real time. Additionally, I've been composing solo violin pieces for myself that incorporates electronics and live processing. Here is a piece called Let a New Earth Rise, Let Another World Be Born, Let a Bloody Peace Be Written in the Sky for my co-form ensemble called Diaphanous, which is a genre-bending composition, improvisation, and performance collective that I started with Abby Swidler and A.B. Neiman. This piece was the first time I wrote for our group and the first work involving graphic notation. The next segment will be a reel of some recent performances and recordings that I've done. Conclude, I would like to share some upcoming projects that I have coming up. Firstly, I am writing a new sinfonietta work for the Lucerne Festival Academy this year. I'm also excited to say that I'll be writing a new solo violin suite with electronics for the renowned violinist Midori. And lastly, I'm developing my debut solo album, which will involve violin, voice, electronics, and other miscellaneous sounds.